never ever have enough time to play it all. You know everybody wants to walk in someone else's shoes. Everyone's forgot who they are.
Hello, welcome back to Otter Creek in Rio Grande, where I'm getting ready to get started on making some mock-ups. Now, I have mock-ups already made from the Time Saver. If you haven't seen any of those videos or any of my previous videos, you can go back and take a look at those. But basically, everything that you see here right now already exists back over here as kit models. So one of the things that I'm considering doing, actually I'm not really considering it, I'm going to do it, is instead of spending a lot of time with cardboard mock-ups, you know, trying to do highly detailed replicas of what I think might go there, I think I'm gonna go with wood blocks. So here's the resource that I'm making use of to come up with my wood blocks. So what I have here, don't worry, these have been declassified, are the Library of Congress Sanborn fire maps. And so this area that I'm modeling is modeled after the town of Black Hawk, Colorado. And this area in particular is one of the areas that I'm gonna try and replicate. So what I've done, I've taken this and blown it up. Another area that I really would like to model in one way or another is the city hall with this staircase that goes all the way up to this road where the school and the church sit. I don't think I'm gonna attempt to do any ore bins because there won't be any trackage up there at all. And then to some degree, I may do some of these buildings here, which are to the left of the city hall area. This is the left side of that, which this goes off at a different angle. So my plan is that they offer a scale within the map itself, and you can see that I think this ended up being like 5/16 equals 10 feet. That's a scale I have no desire to use. But my plan is to use a piece of this cardboard here and scale off what I believe is 5 feet. And I don't know, I might even be able to get a little bit closer than that, and then use that scale to determine what is the width and length of these buildings and make them all out of 2x4s. So my thought is that this building here, and it's kind of hard to understand, but if you look at the key, you know, they tell you that red equals a brick building, blue equals a stone building, gray is iron, brown is adobe, green are specials, and then there's other information as well. So I believe that these three lots are all occupied by the same building. And it is clearly the biggest building. This one might be a little bit longer, but I don't think this building actually protrudes into the street as I see it. And of course, this whole area, I've got pictures, you know, from different time frames. I've got some, I believe, that are in the early 1880s, and then some that are more like in the early 1900s. So I'm gonna go with my best bet and say that this building's probably not that long. But the point of that is that if I can put together 2x4s that are this length and this width, I should be able to get every other building out of maybe that configuration of 2x4. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go glue some 2x4s together and then figure out this building, cut it out first, what the dimensions of it are, and I'm just gonna have to guess on the height on all of these, but this is a 2-story building, and kind of go from there so that I've got something to work with in here before I go to laying track. I would really like to have a good idea if what I think I want to do is going to work in here, because all of this is actually going up grade. I need to figure out the grade that it's going to go up, and then the street on the back side of that is also going up grade this way. So I'm actually kind of going to create a switchback, and I want to get as many of those buildings put in as possible to see how it impacts the overall scene, where the track is going to be, and then also how the mountain is going to interface with all of this, because the mountain is going to have to come over the top in here somewhere, because I would like for the mountain to be high enough that it blocks your view to the rest of the layout over yonder. All right, so what my declassified documents have told me is there's about 255 scale feet from the end of where the little barber shop is all the way down here to where what I believe is a printer's building. So that's very encouraging. I was worried that this was going to come up to be like something crazy, 1/8 of a mile, or something that just I wasn't going to be able to model close at all. So as it turns out, that ends up being real close to 3 feet in the real world. So I think I counted, it should be a total of 9 buildings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 buildings. So if I can come up with the correct sizes for these buildings out of a 2x4 or multiple 2x4s, and what I'm thinking is that should equate to about 3 feet by 9 inches, give or take, if I wanted to recreate the whole thing out of wood. So I'm not sure that I can do that, because I don't know that I've got enough 3-foot lengths of 2x4s in my scrap pile, but I'm gonna give it a college try. And worst case scenario is that I have to make, glue up multiple different 2x4s to come up with that. So that's the next step, is coming up with some glued up 2x4s that I can cut out templates that equal the width and length of specific buildings as they existed in Black Hawk. And, as luck would have it, this building is about 40 scale feet from end to end. So it's only about 20 feet off of what these 3 buildings, and Again, I'm not entirely sure what time frame this was. I'll have to look. But I think it was 3 shops in one building. I think there was a hardware store, maybe a clothing store, and then some kind of meat packing or meat store, which there was actually 2 meat stores together. Kind of wonder if maybe this was a temporary building built here until the brick building could be put in here. Be interesting to know that. Well, my original idea of creating a large enough block of wood to kind of get all the buildings out of that template, not gonna work. Just not gonna work. Too much wood involved. So what I'm gonna do now is go ahead and start with the largest building, which is the big brick building that has the 3 stores inside. And that building, near as I can tell, is a 60 by 60 building. And so by gluing 6 2x4s together this way, I should easily get 60 by 60. But what I need to do first is get all of this down to where every 2x4 is the exact same size so it can be glued together in a way that makes sense to make the final cross cut at 60 inches, or 60 scale feet rather. So that's what I'm gonna do, is size my wood. So after I got the first 6 2x4s planed down and ready to glue together, I discovered that I only had 16 feet of height. And something tells me that brick building is more than 16 feet tall. So I went ahead and added another layer of 3. And so now to the top, I'm a good 24, 25 scale feet from the bottom to the top. So the next step is I want to take a little closer look at the building and see if I can't nail down the height within a couple of feet before I glue anything together, because these, the top 3, I could shave those down another 1/8 or 1/4, whatever I need to get the exact height of the building, or maybe just a little bit lower if I want to put something in front of it, as a fascia, if you will. I've gone back to the drawing board, so to speak, and done some prototype research. And I went ahead and printed off some of these pictures that will help me figure out what the dimensions and the overall size and scope of this scene is going to be. And this picture, which is my favorite one, this is the picture that kind of made me decide this is what I wanted to model, does a really good job of kind of showing the perspective of how large this building is as compared to the others. And another thing that I think is really notable is how large these buildings are, even in the same scene, and how far away they are, because there's a whole nother street back behind this row of buildings that you can't really see in here. But this is actually the front of this building where that large smokestack is. So there's a street that runs up there, and then back here is where City Hall is, and then there's this staircase that goes up to this rock wall. So this is pushed pretty far back in the scene, and these buildings are just still huge. So that's something I'm gonna have to consider. I'll probably have to maybe scale these down, because I do want these two buildings, but they would probably have to be kind of a forced perspective, smaller building than the prototype. I'm a ways away from really doing that, but it's just something to kind of consider, and that's what this picture is pretty good at explaining to a person. So kind of the next picture that I looked at was this one, because determining the actual size of this building, my Sanborn maps told me that this building was 60 by 60, but I really didn't have a good idea of the height of the building. So I went in with this picture, and you have to make some assumptions in this one, and that is this building equal distance away from this building? And your standard doorway height, as I understand it, is usually 7 feet. So if from here to here is 7 feet, that gives you a good measurement to figure out what this is. And I determined that this is about 6 feet based on this. Unfortunately, you can't see the bottom of the building, and so it makes it difficult to get the overall height of the building. So I thought, maybe this building still exists, which probably what I should have done first. And a fun fact, it still exists, and it's the Sasquatch Casino. So using the same techniques from the previous picture, here are some things that I've determined. Because I did this on Google Earth, and I determined without a doubt that this building is almost to the T, 60 feet by 60 feet. And the next thing I determined is that these windows, I'm pretty sure, are right at 6 feet from this corner to this corner. And that's based on a measurement from here to here of being 7 feet. And so what that tells me is that in this particular picture, 1 millimeter is equal to about 4.5 feet, 4.5 millimeters is equal to 1 foot in the scale. So I've come to the conclusion that this building is right at 25 feet, give or take, a third of a foot. So what that tells me is that back on my blocks, as long as I've got more than 25 feet in height, I should be good. Now you might be wondering why I'm going to such lengths to figure out the dimensions of a mock-up. If I'm 60 by 60 by 20 feet, who cares, or whatever. But one of the things that I'm considering doing is, the scratch build on this, because that's what I want to do, is I want to scratch build all of these buildings, and I want to do them out of 2x4s, or at least give it my best college try. I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to be successful, but I'm moving forward. I'm wanting to kind of make sure that my block of wood has enough give and take on the left and right and up and down parameters that I can glue on either wood sheeting that is brick material, or plastic material that's brick material, and then figure out a way to model all this in here as well. And looking at these pictures, it's pretty obvious that the doors are pretty much in center line with the center of each group of 3 windows, and then they're recessed in. So the real trick here is gonna be figuring out how to do this, and then, kind of the cornice work, which I won't need to be near this fancy for my purposes. But, I watch Boomer, and Boomer figures this stuff out. And so if I go with plastic, I might be able to come up with something close to this eventually. But I'm getting, too far over my feet at the moment. I just want to get the major dimensions of this. And, I had success with the other building that I've done out of a 2x4. If you're wondering where I'm going with all this 2x4 stuff, I'll point out that this structure is 2 2x4s glued together and then cut down to the current shape that it's at right now. And all I did was skin on some of this clapboard siding and everything that it needed to look like a finished building. The windows themselves, this is Sharpie. All I did was go in and figure out where the windows were gonna be behind the clapboard before I glued it on, and got a black Sharpie and blacked them out. And I think for the most part, unless you really study the building, you'll never know that it's not hollow on the inside. So what I'm looking at is, the advantage of doing this kind of thing is you can stack shapes on top of each other. So, if I needed an extra roof line or something, like a church steeple that come up out of there, whatever, it's possible that with a bandsaw, you could go in here and notch out an area of this 2x4 and then put in, a square spire that recessed in. And that would be pretty simple to do. You can also cut, thin strips out of an existing chunk that, maybe this is the roof line that you want and the height that you need. And then you could glue what you've cut off, onto the face there, or, however it works out, they're configurable in such a way that, you come up with whatever you need. So that's my plan with all of Blackhawk. I say it's a plan because it might end up being way more than I think it's going to be, but stick around and find out where it goes.